All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 37 of the Facts Over Feelings podcast. I am pleasured to be joined by Ryan once again.
Mhm.
We have obviously a lot of football to go over and a little bit of the NBA to talk about as well. One disclaimer before we get this podcast going, I am very sorry if I misled the viewers into picking the championship game winners in the NFL. I got Green Bay wrong and I got Buffalo very wrong. So I went 0-2 on the weekend, but I'm still 8-4 overall in the postseason. So not bad, but uh, didn't do very well this past Sunday.
Yeah.
Ryan, I'll hand it off to you to get us started.
Yeah, so I mean, speaking of football, and we can get into the NFL, the championship games. The games, some of them went how we expected. The other one, I mean, not so much. So I mean, I predicted that the Chiefs would win against Buffalo, and we can talk about this game first. So, Trevor, this game went about how I anticipated. I know you had faith and were hopeful that Buffalo could pull it out, and you've had a lot of confidence in Buffalo for a long time. Sean
Mm-hmm.
McDermott, you've been very adamant that he deserves Coach of the Year over Kevin
Still does, but
Stefanski,
yes.
and you've been very adamant in that belief. But Buffalo came out, and as anticipated, they just couldn't keep up with Patrick Mahomes. And when you look at the game, I mean, and you look specifically at the box score, this game doesn't look like it was that lopsided. Specifically
It
looking at the
was.
box score, but it definitely was. I mean, they had similar rushing yards, similar passing yards. A lot of similar time of possession. A lot of these things were very close statistically, but the game kind of pulled away. Trevor, I'd say in the second quarter when the Chiefs, I think, went on a 3 touchdown run in the second quarter, and at that
Mm-hmm.
point, you're just like, okay, I mean, this defense of Buffalo's just can't really slow down Patrick Mahomes in this offense. And that's basically the story, at least to me. There's really
Mm-hmm.
not much else to say. I mean, Kansas City went in, took care of business in front of their home crowd, put up the points they needed, and Josh Allen couldn't quite do enough. I
I
mean,
agree.
I think he had one pick, and he was sacked 4 times. So I mean, he was sacked 4 times for 53 yards. So there were some really big sacks on Josh Allen. But I think either way you slice it, their Buffalo's defense was not up to the task of stopping Patrick Mahomes, and it's something I anticipated. So this is kind of what I expected. But I do want to kind of shout out Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, once again, because they were absolutely sensational. They pretty much they were almost the entire yardage output for the Kansas City receiving core, both of them combining for about 290 receiving yards out of the 325 that Patrick Mahomes threw.
Mm-hmm.
That's unbelievable. That's actually unbelievable. They were sensational, and they continue to be. And I expect them to continue to be in the Super Bowl. But yeah, Trevor, I don't really know if there's much else to say other than this went how I expected. And I guess one more thing, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I've been disappointed in him, and I know that they continue to, kind of shuffle him in and out of the backfield, Trevor. But 6 carries for 7 yards. I mean, that's just not going to cut it. And clearly, Kansas City doesn't think it's going to cut it in the postseason because he's not getting the carries that even Darrell Williams is. I mean, Darrell Williams, I think, had 13 carries in this past game. So, I want to see more out of CEH, not only in the Super Bowl but next season and seasons in the future.
Yeah, no, I think you unpacked this game really well, actually. I want to point out a couple smaller
Yeah,
details.
of course.
One, I was actually very impressed with Kansas City's defense, right? You knew their offense was going to do its thing, but I thought their defense was really, really good. I thought they got after Josh Allen very effectively. You saw on multiple sacks, or even if they weren't sacks, Josh Allen had a bad habit in this game of just running backwards.
Yeah.
When he felt the pressure, he kept running backwards and backwards and backwards, and he would hold on to the ball. So that's a bit of of a young quarterback mistake there by Josh Allen. And secondly, moving on into the secondary of this Kansas City defense, no one was really getting open for Buffalo. I mean, everything was contested, everything was earned, everything was difficult, and they didn't stop Stephon Diggs, right? He had a decent game, but I thought like everything was very contested, very hard earned, and I thought Kansas City's defense did a great job in this game, slowing down Buffalo, slowing down Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. And number two, you're right. Kansas City's offense is just unbelievable. Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are superstars. Patrick Mahomes is already on his way to being a Hall of Famer. I'd argue if he retired after the season, he'd be a Hall of Famer,
Wow.
regardless of the Super Bowl outcome. And here's what Tampa Bay is going to have to do. Tampa Bay is going to have to take away Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill. You're not going to take away both, but they need to make it their mission to take away one of them because clearly Kansas City can easily win games when Hill and Kelce are both going. Well, let's say you take out Kelce. Who's going to step up? McCole Hardman, maybe. Byron Pringle, maybe. If you're able to take away one of them, double Hill, double Kelsey, do whatever you can to take one of them out of the game, you have a shot. And I think that's your only chance of stopping Kansas City's offense. And then to close this out, I want to talk a little bit about Buffalo. Buffalo just wasn't quite ready to win a Super Bowl this year. I mean, they took a huge step as a franchise. They won 2 playoff games. They beat 2 very good teams in the playoffs. And, Josh Allen took a huge step in his 3rd year. And I really like where this team is going. And I think this is going to be a wake-up call for this team going forward, that they can win a Super Bowl and that they are very close to being a Super Bowl team. They are 1 win away this year. And I thought it was a pretty emotional moment. Stephon Diggs, the only player on the field watching the Chiefs, Stephon Diggs and Josh Norman were both on the field watching the Chiefs AFC Championship ceremony. Sean McDermott comes out from the locker room and hugs them on the field while they are watching the Chiefs get crowned the AFC champions. I think that's a very humbling moment and a very, who Sean McDermott is and why I love him so much as an NFL coach and why I think Buffalo will be back for years to come.
Yeah, I mean, I want to point out a couple of things. I do like the point you made about Diggs and Norman being out on the field, when the Chiefs were getting crowned for the title. I think, we always talk about these things kind of, sort of these moments that, kind of show you how much these players care. And it's kind of, kind of gets cliche at some points, but it really does inspire, like, not only the fans, but like the rest of the team, right? When you have players out there who just so clearly show that they care so much. I mean, it's a good sign for the future, definitely. But I wanted to point out just one more thing before I move on from this game. And that was, I really applaud Kansas City, especially their defense, in their ability to come back from a slow start. I mean, Trevor, like you remember they had an early Dawson Knox touchdown, the Buffalo Bills did. And I think they jumped out to a 9-0 lead, if I am correct. I could be wrong in that statement.
They did. That was off the Hardman muff punt. They got it at the 1 yard line and scored the touchdown.
Yeah. So, I mean, my point is I think they did a good job just as a team, but specifically the defense. And even though they didn't have contribute to that muff punt, just kind of not letting Buffalo get momentum on the offensive end and just marching down the field continually. They didn't let it snowball, and that's a mark of a really experienced, good team. And I just wanted to point that out because not a lot of teams can really slow down something like that, especially against a very good team like Buffalo, right? Because a team like Buffalo, when they get out to a quick 9-0 lead off a turnover, I mean, who knows? Anything can happen. You can get the ball rolling and just start snowballing. But, Kansas City was able to stop that and slow that down. So I wanted to point that out and give credit where credit's due.
Absolutely. With that, moving on to the more exciting of the 2 conference championship games, Ryan. Yes. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go first here.
Yeah, no problem.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers reached their first Super Bowl in franchise history, beating the Green Bay Packers 31-26. I got this game wrong, as I already mentioned. I actually thought Green Bay was going to win this game.
Yep.
And Tampa Bay Tom Brady gave them multiple opportunities to win this game. But to unpack the game as a whole, I thought it was a great, evenly matched football game. I thought both teams clearly wanted this game really bad. Both coaches really wanted this game really bad. And for me, I think the story of the game is, and we'll get to the decision to get to the field goal, but I think the story of the game for me is when Tom Brady threw those 3 picks in the second half, Aaron Rodgers went 3 and out each time after they got the ball back. And I thought Aaron Rodgers, he's going to be the MVP. I still think he's the MVP. I don't want to say he choked, but I thought he underperformed in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter of this football game, right? In the third quarter, he let him back, got him back in the game. But in the fourth quarter, their defense was locking down Tampa Bay. I mean, multiple interceptions by Tom Brady, multiple stops, and Aaron Rodgers couldn't do anything with it. And I think that's on him. That's on the Green Bay offense for not being able to execute. He is the best player. He is the MVP. So it is, on him a little bit. Now getting to the field goal, I think that was one of the dumbest decisions in NFL history. There's 2 minutes left in the game and you're down 8. You kick a field goal, you're down 5. You still have to score a touchdown regardless. That was the most pointless 3 points in NFL history. And I love using the phrase on this podcast. I steal it from somebody else. I forgot who said it, but anytime you kick a field goal in the NFL, you're 3 points closer to losing. And that was a perfect example of it. A complete waste of 3 points. It was one of the dumbest decisions in NFL history by Matt LaFleur. You have Aaron Rodgers, you have Devontae Adams. You're telling me you can't cook up a play that could get him the ball? I mean, it was just inexcusable and awful. And I will say, I think Tampa Bay has a huge uphill battle because Kansas City is a machine, and there's clearly errors and faults on this Tampa Bay team that I think Kansas City will be able to expose.
Yeah.
But good for Tampa Bay. They had before Tom Brady came, right? They've never been to a Super Bowl. They play 3 away playoff games. Now they get a home Super Bowl. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers franchise has had the worst winning percentage in NFL history among all the franchises. And in 1 year, Tom Brady comes in, leads them to a Super Bowl. And I think that's a credit to his greatness. He's the undisputed GOAT, in my opinion. And just really happy for him, and really happy for Bruce Arians. I'm a little sad because I wish he did it with the Cardinals reaching his first Super Bowl. But they earned it. There was a lot of criticism about Tampa Bay all year. Can they do it? Are they overrated? And they did it.
Yeah.
And got to give them credit when credit is due.
No, yeah, for sure. And there's a lot to unpack here, Trevor. And I'm going to start off by just talking about Tampa Bay real quick before I get into this game. And I wanted to point out I need to say something because, you mentioned Bruce Arians, who's, like, congrats to him. But to me, like, I don't want to say that I don't think this team did it in spite of him, but I really don't think he did this team any favors this season. I mean, like, he had a public dispute with his quarterback, Tom Brady, who we both agree, and some people disagree, but most people agree, is probably the undisputed greatest player of all time in the NFL. He had a public dispute with him, which is never a good thing. You don't have a public dispute with your star quarterback. He refuses to start Ronald Jones consistently, which puzzles a lot of people. Not you, but it puzzles a lot of people. Just little things like that. He continually tries to make the offense kind of a very big play-esque offense when Tom Brady clearly does not have the arm that he once did. And we saw that against the Packers, Trevor. I mean, there were a couple throws Tom Brady made. I remember one distinctly when he just overthrew or he threw a ball deep to Mike Evans on the right sideline. It just wasn't even like Evans couldn't even really get a hand on it at all. I mean, it was just clean at the Green Bay defender. It was a nice lob, kind of floater. And it was just a pick. It was just a pick. And that, to me, encompasses what Bruce Arians has tried to do with this offense. Maybe that was Brady's mistake there. I don't know. But I don't love that Arians is trying to force the ball down the field so far with a quarterback like Tom Brady, who's much, much better at reading the line of scrimmage, having short intermediate passes, and making the defense pay for small mistakes. But onto this game in general, there's a few things I want to point out. And I know Green Bay got behind early, Trevor, and I know they were down, I think, 28-10 at one point. But at some point in that game, I feel like you have to like run the ball a little more with your star running back, who is going to be a free agent this offseason, is going to be a hot commodity. Aaron Jones is a very good runner, and they gave him 6 carries in this game. They gave more to Jamal Williams, and they gave a few to A.J. Dillon. I wish they'd given more to Aaron Jones. And because he's a really big play guy, and he's shown it throughout the last few seasons that he can be a game breaker. And the fact they only gave him 6 carries, I'm not really a big fan of that. Talking about Aaron Rodgers kind of choking in the fourth quarter per se, I don't disagree with you. There were ample opportunities for him to drive down the field and kind of take the reins from Tom Brady, because Brady, he had 3 picks in this game. And some of these were crucial picks too, Trevor. I mean, these were, one was off Mike Evans' hands. Another one, like I said, was overthrown. But, these were still a lot of turnovers from Brady, which you don't see very often. These were gifts. And a lot of times Rodgers couldn't capitalize. So he did disappoint me a little bit in that respect. But at the end of the day, I mean, you have to look at Matt LaFleur and just kind of say, are you even trying? I want to know what goes through the head of someone like Matt LaFleur when kicking a field goal. I mean, I get you trust your defense. Your defense has been playing pretty well. I mean, they've stopped the Bucs for the most part, a fair amount of times throughout this game and gotten turnovers. But still, I mean, you're gonna leave it down to Tom Brady, the best player of all time, to get the ball back and drive down the field and score a touchdown. Why not just put it all on the line, go for it. And if you get it, you know what I mean? You're on the 6-yard line. You probably won't get a better opportunity than that. I mean, the odds are against you to get all the way back there in that position, and you still need a touchdown either way. So, it's just a very puzzling decision on LaFleur's part, and it's clearly caused a little bit of division. I know the players were probably very angry. I know Rodgers is very angry. He had some comments about I don't know where I'll be, but then afterwards he kind of, talked them, or he walked that back a little bit. He was like, no, I should be in Green Bay next year. So these players were obviously very fired up and kind of frustrated about that decision, rightfully so. But all in all, it was a good game. Jair Alexander, I want to shout him out. 4 targets, 0 catches, 0 yards, 2 picks. I mean, the guy absolutely locked down. Sensational. He was fantastic in this game, this championship game, and he gave it his all. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that game. I don't know. We can move on, Trevor, unless you want to have any final words about this game.
Just a couple final points real quick.
Yeah, of course.
Kevin King for Green Bay, not a good day for him. I feel a little bit bad because that was – he got burned on a lot of plays. That's all. I'll leave it at that. And Green Bay fans, I'm sure, are very angry with his performance. And I thought you brought up a good point about the Tampa Bay offense is not really designed for a quarterback like Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And I think that's just attributed to his greatness, that the offense is not really what his vision is of a perfect offense. He doesn't really, as you said, he's not a guy who likes to throw the ball down the field a lot. You know, he doesn't have that arm that he used to have. And he still leads his team to a Super Bowl and wins 3 road playoff games. I just think that's incredibly impressive. And one final point about Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians is Bruce Arians. He's called everybody out. He's a very unfiltered guy, and it can get him into a little bit of trouble sometimes. But I have to give him a little bit of credit. I mean, he kept this team together. Him and the GM brought in some pieces, mid-season, guys like Antonio Brown, guys like Leonard Fournette, who they brought in, and they've made impacts on this team. And for whatever reason, Tampa Bay is going to the Super Bowl. I would say majority Tom Brady for sure. But I do think Bruce Arians deserves a little bit of credit. And I think him and Tom Brady still have a very good relationship. I saw them hugging it out on the sidelines. So for Tampa Bay, it wasn't perfect. It was ugly at times, but now they're 1 win away from a championship. And I'll give an early prediction. I think Kansas City wins this game, but it's been a great year for Tampa Bay. And they have a home playoff game in the state of Florida, which will probably allow a decent amount of fans in.
Yep.
So that could be a huge benefit for Tampa Bay. So we'll see.
Yeah, so I mean, Trevor, we can dive right into this game if you'd like. Move on to this Super Bowl matchup between the Bucs and the Chiefs, and you make a good point. The fans will be allowed in. I believe the number's around 22 to 26,000, so it's a fair amount of fans that they're having at this game.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a decent amount.
So there will be not a strong impact, but there'll be a minor impact on the game. These fans can get loud. It's the Super Bowl. They'll probably get very hyped up, and it should be exciting for the players. I'm excited to see it. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I think you're absolutely right. The Chiefs, I just don't think there's any way you can bet against this team. This team's shown 2 years in a row, how good they are and why they're so good. Their defense seemingly, Trevor, gets better as the season goes on, particularly when you hit playoff time. The Chiefs' defense just seems to step up at the right moments. And the offense speaks for itself. There's not really much else I have to say. I kind of want to speak on Tampa Bay for a second. I think it'll be relatively close because they have a very high-powered offense, Trevor. I mean, you have Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Antonio Brown, who should return for this game. And having those 3 receivers, I mean, that's the best receiver trio in the NFL. I mean, in terms of talent. I mean, I don't think there's any disputing that. So they're absolutely fantastic on the offensive end. So what Brady has all the weapons he needs. It's just if the defense can hold Kansas City, and I don't think they can. Because, Trevor, we look back, Trevor, you remember when the Chiefs played the Bucs back in the regular season. The game wasn't even close. It was close for a time. Maybe in the third quarter, Tampa Bay made a little bit of a push, but Tyreek Hill had over 200 receiving yards in the first quarter. I think we can all remember that iconic game. So I really don't know how Tampa Bay is going to have any answers. The Chiefs are so good at exploiting zone versus man coverage. They have so many good plays, pre-snap motion plays to be able to tell if it's zone or man, and they can adjust accordingly. The Chiefs offense I think is just unlike any other. And with the speed of Tyreek and the versatility of Travis Kelce, I just think it's too much. So, I'm probably going to predict the score of about 31 to 24. I think Kansas City's going to win. Pretty high scoring Super Bowl, but both these teams have high powered offenses. So I think it'll be relatively high scoring.
I agree with you. Excuse me. I do think Kansas City's going to win this game. And for pretty much all the reasons you just said. Kansas City's a machine. I mean, and you see it a little bit in the regular. It's weird. In the regular season, they win a lot of close games. It kind of reminds me of a guy like LeBron James or a championship caliber team in the NBA, right? They don't play to their potential. I don't want to say they're bored, but they do enough to win, and then they gear up in the postseason. And that's exactly what Kansas City does, particularly on defense. You've noticed how their defense has taken a huge step up in their 2 playoff wins. They held Cleveland to 17 points. They did a great job on Josh Allen in the AFC Championship game. And I think with the Super Bowl, this defense is playing well. The Chiefs offense is the Chiefs offense. It's one of the most unstoppable offenses I've ever seen. I mean, and Patrick Mahomes is obviously a gifted quarterback, but give Andy Reid a lot of credit. Those plays that he calls, I have trouble following the guys on the field and where they're running and where they're going. A lot of smoke and mirrors, a lot of motion at the line of scrimmage, a lot's going on. And there always seems to be a new wrinkle. So when Todd Bowles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense is going to prepare, there's going to be something that they haven't seen in this game in the Super Bowl. So that's really tough as a defense. It keeps you on your toes. And what's crazy, final point on the Chiefs offense is what's crazy about the Chiefs offense is they don't really have much of a running game.
Yeah.
I mean, as you mentioned, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was pathetic in the championship game. Darrell Williams was okay. They don't have a running game, and they're still one of the most unstoppable offenses I've ever seen.
Yep.
Moving on to Tampa Bay, I agree. They have a dynamic offense, but I think Brady is prone to mistakes this season. He has thrown a lot of interceptions, and Tampa Bay's just a little inconsistent, right? They look great at times.
Yes.
And the Green Bay game is kind of a microcosm of their season. They look like an unstoppable team in the first half. They're great. Tom Brady's on fire. The defense is shutting down Aaron Rodgers. And then in the second half, there's a bit of a letdown. And the defense, slows down. And Brady throws 3 picks. And then it looks really, really sloppy. So for me, I think Kansas City is just too much. I think this is going to be a great matchup, kind of like the past/present versus the present future.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I agree with you, Ryan. I'm going to go Kansas City. I'm going to go 34-23 Chiefs.
Yeah, so very similar scores. You make a lot of good points. I don't really have too much else to add. I don't know. It's going to be fun watching the old versus the new. I think the Bucs will put up a good fight, but I think the one great point that you made was the inconsistency of Tampa Bay. And we've talked about this. We've highlighted this since week 1, Trevor, back when Tampa Bay lost to the Saints week 1. You remember all the way back then, and we were like, should we be concerned? And we're like, no, it's a new team. But, I mean, maybe we should have been because they've been this way the whole year. And obviously they've made it this far in the playoffs, so you've got to give credit where credit's due. They made it all the way to the Super Bowl. But, will the whole team show up on Super Bowl Sunday? I don't know. We don't really know. So that team, you'd think everyone will show up at the Super Bowl, but you don't know because that's how this team has operated this year. Mm-hmm. They beat Green Bay in the playoffs, but got blown out by them in the regular season. Or wait, no, they didn't. They blew them out in the regular season. I'm sorry, but they got blown out by Kansas City in the regular season and have been beaten soundly by a few other teams at points throughout the season. So, definitely have some inconsistencies there, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a great game. I'm excited to watch it. But I think, Trevor, with that, if unless you, I think, are you good or no more thoughts on that?
Let's talk some hoops.
So we're going to move on and talk about some NBA. We just wanted to jump in and talk about a few teams on this podcast, because the NBA is in full swing. Trevor, we're officially 25% of the way through the season. At least some teams. Most teams are about 18 games into the season, which is exactly 25% of the way through that 72-game season. So the season's kind of moving pretty quickly. I mean, you don't really feel it, but already a quarter way in. I feel like it was just yesterday we started. So, I wanted to talk about a few teams that we, think have done really well or think are struggling right now. And Trevor, if it's okay, I was going to bring up one of mine, which was the Washington Wizards. Now,
go ahead.
They're
doing really well. So,
well, that is fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which conference or which team you like, not the case. The Wizards are struggling really, really badly right now. In fact, they're actually last place in the Eastern Conference by 2.5 games. It's not even close how far back they are. Or sorry, I lied. They're a game out in last place, right behind Miami and right next to Detroit. So they're 3-11. They've struggled mightily this year. And I think, Trevor, there's really only one thing I have to say about this team, and it's the defense. The defense has absolutely struggled a ton this year. Washington's given up 120 points per game, 120, which is, Trevor, I want to add, the worst defense in the NBA, tied with the Sacramento Kings in opponents' points per game allowed. And, this just kind of highlights the struggles with this team. You get a guy like Russell Westbrook. You think that, we're going to contend for a playoff spot with Bradley Beal, 2 superstars on the same team, right? One of the best guard duos in the NBA, potentially. But neither of those guys play defense. Both these guys have negative defensive ratings. They don't play good team defense. And it shows. I mean, Bradley Beal, Trevor, made a comment. He said, we can't even defend, like a stationary car. Like we can't defend anything. We can't stop anybody, and it bothers him, and it should bother him. This team needs to get a fire underneath them. They need to get it together. They were out for over a week due to COVID exposure. So obviously they had some time off, maybe they reviewed their defensive sets and all that, but they've struggled mightily. And I want to add that Westbrook and Beal don't really seem to be playing that well together. They're both putting up numbers. Russell Westbrook puts up multiple triple doubles this season, like he always does, but he continues to struggle with his jump shot as he has for the last few years and pretty much his whole career, outside of a few seasons. Can't really shoot the 3. And Beal just takes an insane amount of shots. In their last game, Trevor, he took 37 shots, I believe, put up 47 points, but took 37 shots to do so. So he just has it's an insane amount of volume. And, there's really not that much else, not that much more talent on that team. Thomas Bryant had some talent, but he tore his ACL earlier in the year, so that definitely hurts them. But this team's disappointed me because I expected them to be not this bad on the defensive end. I expected their offense to be good and contend for a playoff spot. But as of now, Trevor, I don't really see how they can turn this around.
Yeah, you mentioned Russell Westbrook. I'm actually scrolling on my phone. I'm trying to find. I saw on ESPN or something the other day that Russell Westbrook has like 163 points or 263 points on the season, but he's taken the exact same amount of shots as he has points. So I think his inefficiency, as we've highlighted multiple times, is being portrayed once again, and ESPN kind of exposed that. Anyways, back to the Wizards as a whole. I feel bad for Bradley Beal because I feel like he thinks he has to do everything, and he's not wrong. I mean, they have nothing outside of – I mean, when Westbrook doesn't play, it's him and nobody else. Hachimura is an okay young piece. He's shown flashes. Davis Bertans is a nice boost off the bench. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, this team's been bad. They've been disappointing. And I think for the good of the Wizards, and I think both teams would benefit, I think trading Bradley Beal is a great idea for the Wizards. I would start the rebuild. Clearly, this isn't working. And trade Bradley Beal to a championship team where he feels like he can win. I saw a rumor mill the other day that the Clippers might try and go after him. I think that would be very, very interesting if they got Bradley Beal. 3 super teams, you could call it now in the NBA. But that as a fan, I would love to see that. But yeah, the Wizards have been a dumpster fire. They can't guard anybody. They can't play defense. And again, Ryan, you said it multiple times. Russell Westbrook, teams are better without Russell Westbrook on the floor. We saw with the Rockets last year. They looked better without him.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. It's his play style, but he puts up good numbers. Russell Westbrook is just not – he's just not a great team player. Nope. And I don't want to say he's a ball hog. I mean, he can be a ball hog at times, but it's just weird. He doesn't bring out the best in people for whatever reason. And I feel a little bit bad for him because I feel like he tries very hard. He works his ass off, I will say. I mean, you can see it. He's gotten a lot bigger over the years. He's very muscular now too. But yeah, for whatever reason, he just doesn't fit well with teams. And it's unfortunate, but the Wizards are another victim of Russell Westbrook's inability to play team basketball.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight a couple things about Westbrook before we move on from the Wizards, and that is, in his games with the Wizards this year, Trevor, he's putting up career low numbers in a lot of categories, efficiency categories. He's shooting 61% from the free throw line this year, which is a career low. Previous to this year, he was averaging about 80% from the free throw line. This year it's down to 60. So that's a really, really big drop. So that's obviously very concerning from, back in his triple-double days with OKC, he was averaging about 84, 85%. So it's definitely fallen, considerably. He's shooting 30% from 3. And perhaps most concerning, he's only shooting 40% from the 2-point range. So that's down 11% from last year with Houston, Trevor, which was about 51%. So, that's really concerning. All these efficiency numbers are really low. And he's taking 18 shots a game and only making about 7. I mean, it's just not good basketball. And sure, he has 10 assists, per game. But, when you take this many shots in an inefficient manner, it's just not going to help your team. And you average 5 turnovers per game, I might add, which is also near a career high. It's just below his career high of 5.4. So he's definitely struggling in a lot of assets of the game, and he's just not helping the team. He's not helping the team. And I think the best case scenario for Washington is keep Beal and trade Westbrook for just almost anything, honestly. A couple picks and maybe a salary dump or two, someone who's a little bit more of a positive player, positive role player. And I get that people think they should trade Bradley Beal, but if you retool and then get another superstar in the offseason, you could potentially have a better opportunity next year. But yeah, as of now, Westbrook and Beal just isn't going to work, both on the defensive end and the offensive end. And I think, Westbrook's numbers highlight that. So, I don't mean to be too hard on Westbrook, but I really don't think he helps most of these teams play winning basketball.
I would agree with that. My only worry with keeping Beal is it doesn't seem like Beal wants to be there. And I think Beal wants to win. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think you should trade him now while his value is through the roof. I mean, he's leading the NBA in scoring at 35 points per game.
Yeah.
And I think you could get a haul for him. I think you could get multiple young pieces and multiple draft picks. And same thing with, and maybe not with Russell Westbrook, but you could definitely, for Bradley Beal at the very least, get two young, nice players and at least two first round picks, in my opinion, for him. And I think for a team like the Wizards, where you already got rid of John Wall, your team has a few young guys that are, looking, they have potential. Guys like Rui Hachimura look okay. Bertans, who isn't young, but he seems like he has potential as well. Thomas Bryant shown flashes. I think it's time to retool and rebuild this team.
Yeah.
And that's why I think they should trade Bradley Beal. But Ryan, if you don't have anything else on that, I'd like to move on and talk about a team that I actually think is overachieving a little bit.
No, yeah, let's talk about it.
I want to talk about the Golden State Warriors, and here's why. I know they got blown out last night by my Phoenix Suns. Shout out Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton. Good win last night, boys. Back to the topic at hand, however, I think Golden State has done a fantastic job this season, kind of figuring out who they're going to be.
Yeah.
We saw their first few games. They looked really bad. They got blown out by Brooklyn on opening night. They got killed by Milwaukee on Christmas Day. Two really good teams, albeit. And then they were barely beating teams like the Bulls. They beat the Bulls by 1 point. They had to struggle to beat the Pistons. And for me, the Warriors have just done a really nice job kind of playing within themselves. I mean, Steph Curry's having a fantastic season, averaging 28 a game. I think Wiseman has been nice for them. And I even think Andrew Wiggins is actually playing a lot better for this team as well, which is a good sign. Obviously, Kelly Oubre has been atrocious for them this year, and I feel really bad because I do like Kelly Oubre a lot.
Yeah.
He was very, very, he contributed a lot of positive stuff to my Phoenix Suns, not just on the court, but off the court as well. So he's been atrocious for them. But yeah, if Kelly Oubre can get going, and if Steph can keep playing at a high level, and if Andrew Wiggins can keep playing at a high level, I think getting Draymond back has helped them out a lot. I like this Warriors team. And without Clay, I had them as a 6th seed in the playoffs in my standings before the season started. And I think they could be right around that 6th seed. I think they have enough talent. They have enough pieces. And just credit them and credit Steve Kerr for kind of figuring out this team. They're 10-9. They're not great. But, after the way they started, I think they've bounced back really nicely. And I think they're exceeding expectations a little bit.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, sitting at 10-9, they're right in the thick of it. I know they beat the Lakers in Staples Center just this past week, which is a great win. They obviously are definitely trying to figure things out. And, I think you hit the nail on the head with the Draymond piece that you mentioned. I think, he's a lot of people hate the guy, and rightfully so. I hated the guy for years as a Cleveland fan, but he's kind of the glue for this team. And some teams need a player like this. They need a big who can sit at the elbow and kind of make the right pass, or see the floor well. He's basically their floor general in the half court offense. And that's someone that the Golden State Warriors need. And he's a great defender. I mean, I think that the one thing I can point to is I believe it was against the Sacramento Kings, Trevor, but I could be wrong. It was a 3-on-1 fast break. Draymond Green was under the hoop, and he successfully defended the hoop in a 3-on-1 fast break. That right there is just something that not many players can do. Almost no one can do. And for someone like that to be on Golden State, a team that struggled immensely on defense last year and even has this year, it's very important to have someone like that. I think it was a really good addition. So yeah, Golden State, their offense, we all know about their offense. It's great. At least with Steph Curry back, it's great. James Wiseman's been pretty solid for them this year. He's had his struggles, but he's been relatively solid. And as you said, Andrew Wiggins has been a nice boost. And Eric Pascal's also played very well this year, I think, in his 2nd season off the bench. But I want to see more out of Kelly Oubre. And he had historic troubles from 3, on any jump shot, actually, for that matter, so far this year. Right now he's shooting about 22% from 3, which is definitely better than it was. At one point, I think he was shooting like 10 or 11% from 3. So he's definitely made an improvement there. But, if he can get that number back up to around his career average of 32%, I mean, this team, Trevor, could be absolutely fantastic in terms of, I think they could easily be a top 5 seed in the West. If he can get the shooting figured out, if Wiggins can consistently take smart shots, not be a ball hog, hog these possessions with bad, fadeaway mid-rangers or 3-pointers like he sometimes does. So if they do that, I mean, who knows? This team could figure it out and potentially be dangerous in the playoffs. And we all know when Klay Thompson comes back, this team could easily become, again, an NBA championship contender with 2 Hall of Famers on the team and another All-Star. So we'll see what happens there. But I like what this team's done. I like how they've kind of fought through a little adversity, and people thought they'd break down like they did last year. They didn't. So I'm glad to see them do that. And, we'll see. We'll see if they can maintain that.
I agree, and I want to touch on Kelly Oubre just a little bit more before we move on to
Yeah.
our final team we're going to discuss. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've said it before, and I'll say it one more time. I still Kelly Oubre just seems to still be trying to figure out like how to play with this team, and I feel like he's I don't want to say he's not in it mentally, but I think mentally he's still adjusting to everything. I think he's learning how to play with a guy like Steph Curry, and especially since the Phoenix Suns really brought out the best in him. I mean, he had his best season ever last year with the Suns. He was averaging like 20 points a game almost, shooting the ball very, very well. And he really saw himself as a part of the future, a part of this next generation of Phoenix Suns players where, losing isn't going to be acceptable anymore.
Yeah.
And for him to get traded like that with the flip of the switch, not even finding out, he was literally at the practice facility when he found out he got traded. I think it takes a guy a while to get over that, and I still think he's figuring it out. I'm going to defend him to the max because I really appreciate what he did for the Suns, but he does need to play better.
Yeah.
He is not shooting the ball well. He was supposed to be that guy that would help fill in the loss of Klay Thompson. Him and Wiggins were going to try and combine to help out what you were missing from Klay Thompson. Wiggins is doing better, but Kelly Oubre needs to pick it up, and I think he will. I wouldn't quit on him yet if I'm a Golden State fan, but I agree. He definitely deserves some criticism because I think he is holding him back a little bit.
Mm. Yeah, no doubt. And as I said, he's been playing better, and that's kind of been reflected in team record the last few weeks or month, I should say, as he's improved. But yes, he's definitely struggled, and hopefully he can get back on track to the way he was in previous years. But Trevor, we can move on to our final team we want to talk about, and I want to hand this off to you to talk about this team first because you've talked about this team a few times to start the year, and I know you want to pat yourself on the back, but I want to highlight the Miami Heat are only a quarter away through their season. Okay, so there's still time for this team to turn it around, and I think it's worth noting that Jimmy Butler is not playing right now. So that's also an important piece to note. But Trevor, take it away. Tell us, what you've seen with Miami, why you're worried or not worried.
I'm not necessarily. I'm a little worried. I will say they are on a 5-game losing streak.
Okay.
But if you look at the teams they've lost to, the Clip, Jesus, excuse me, they lost to the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Nets twice, and the Raptors. So they've lost to 5 pretty good basketball teams. As you mentioned, Jimmy Butler has not been playing recently.
Yeah.
And for me, I just think some of their young guys, like Hero and Duncan Robinson in particular, haven't really taken that next step. And Hero is playing okay, Duncan Robinson's playing okay, but you would have thought that based on how they played in the bubble, they would continue to progress even more into this season. Now, obviously, they've had a very short off season. And people forget that the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers, only had about 70 days off from the end of the bubble run to the start of this season. So maybe it's just an issue of too much basketball and in a condensed schedule. But I think they deserve, a little bit of criticism. Here's what I will say. The Miami Heat, and this is what I've said, the Miami Heat weren't necessarily it's similar to what's happening with Toronto. The Miami Heat aren't necessarily a worse basketball team. I just think now that teams have a year of film, a year of watching how they play, a year of watching how some of these young rookies play, I think teams are learning how to play against them, and the Eastern Conference got better. I mean, there are multiple examples of teams getting a lot better. Brooklyn got better. Boston is improving. Philadelphia is getting better. Indiana seems to be getting better. Even teams that you would think are going to be bad, New York, Cleveland, they're improving. Atlanta's improving.
Chicago.
So overall, Chicago, yes. So overall, I just think the NBA is at a really, really high level right now across the board. There are very few really bad teams. And Miami's a team basketball team, right? So they're not necessarily all that much talented. I would say they're in the bottom half in the league in terms of roster strength. Not bottom half in the league, but I don't think they're top 10 in roster strength. They have one all-star, in my opinion, and Bam Adebayo is working his way into becoming an all-star. So the Heat are not a championship caliber team right now. I still think they make the playoffs in the East. But yeah, they're taking a step back. I'll pat myself on the back a little bit. I said that they would not be as good this year as they were last year. And so far I'm right. But as Ryan said, it's a long season. It's hard to give up on the Miami Heat. And I think getting Jimmy Butler back will help out a lot. And also Goran Dragic and Avery Bradley also didn't play in their last game against the Clippers. So this team is clearly beat up right now. I think the short offseason is really affecting them. And I think this will be a team that gets better throughout the year, but still going to take a step back.
Yeah, I mean, here, I'll give my take on this, and I partially agree with you, but I still want to caution people that I think this team is still just as good as they were last year. There's a few small things that I think are contributing to why this team is struggling. And for me, first off, is the fact that they're bottom half in defense as a team right now, Trevor. Bottom half in the Eastern Conference, I should say, and also bottom half in the NBA, which is very different from the way they were last year. I mean, we've talked about this endlessly, how their team defense was very good. They played well on both ends of the floor as a team.
Yes.
And they're struggling right now. They're allowing about 112 points per game. And a lot of these games are without Jimmy Butler. And I think we see his impact of not playing. They've lost 5 straight, Trevor, after being 6-7. They're now 6-12. So this is a little bit concerning on this streak. You hope Jimmy Butler can come back soon. I think he will. I think it was reported that he'll come back hopefully within the week. But there's no doubt they're struggling right now. And I think one of the other key reasons for that is Tyler Hero. He is a great player, no doubt. Or not a great player, but a very nice young player that can turn into something more in the future. But, you look at him right now, Trevor, and he's averaging 28% from the 3-point line. And that right there to me encompasses kind of why this team's struggling. You're missing your best player, and the role players aren't playing as well. This isn't really surprising, right? And the bench is a little thinner than you'd like. And you're playing guys who are normally back-end bench guys who never really play in playoff games or normal playoff team rotations. So that's a concern. But as a product of that, these players don't play as well. And Hero is a guy who, can do some on-ball things, but also is probably very much better off-ball, primarily in catch-and-shoot situations. And I think we've seen that this year, again, shooting 29% from the 3-point line is down a lot from last year, which I believe is around 39 or 40%. So, he's definitely struggled mightily from the 3-point line. And that kind of, to me, encompasses their struggles. I think the defense will get better when Jimmy Butler comes back. I think Hero will start to play better when Jimmy Butler comes back. So I think the key is how quickly can Butler get to 100% and get this team back on track, because they clearly need him as their leader, not necessarily in terms of ball handling, but in terms of just like mentally for the team, going into the game, who's going to motivate you to win this game? Who's going to keep you focused throughout the game? Who's going to get you to play at your best player on the Miami Heat, at least. And that's Jimmy Butler. So, I think when he comes back, we'll see them level out. They'll definitely be a lower seed in the East this year. I don't know if they can catch up to be a top 3 seed. Probably going to be definitely a bottom half of the East seed. So, we'll see if them and Toronto can race to the playoffs and who will make it, if either do or if both do. But I think that Miami will be okay, barring a major Jimmy Butler setback or injury. I think they'll be fine. But it's definitely worth monitoring, because losing 5 in a row in the NBA is not a fluke. I mean, 5 in a row is a lot of lost games in a row. So
it is. Yeah, you make a lot of good points. I will defend Miami a little bit here and say I do think they will make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And you talk about missing Jimmy Butler. They, in their last game at least against the Clippers, they also missed Dragic and Avery Bradley. And we keep hearing that name Avery Bradley. I think he's also a very critical piece to a lot of team success, a typical 3-and-D guy you saw with the Lakers last year. So I do think Miami right now, priority number 1 is to get healthy. Get some of their veteran guys, the Butler, Dragic, Bradley, their veteran leaders healthy. And then we'll see what they can do when they have that full rotation back. I still don't think they're as good as they are last year. I don't want to say they're worse, but I think they're going to take a step back for the reasons I already said.
Okay.
But I agree. I still think they're a good basketball team. I still think they make the playoffs, but they sure as hell are not winning the East this year. That ain't happening.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they're definitely, not winning the East in the regular season. I think if they make the playoffs, they still have a chance to win the East in the playoffs. I mean, I don't think you can count a team like that out just yet. But, you might be right. Maybe this is the year they regress. We all know it's very hard to go back-to-back going deep into the playoffs in the NBA, in any sport for that matter. But, people like LeBron and Tom Brady just make it look so easy. So sometimes we take it for granted. But we'll see if Miami can bounce back and, if they can push the playoffs. I'm confident they will. But, I guess we'll have to see going in the final 3 quarters of this season. So Trevor, I
agree
guess, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess that about wraps it up for this podcast. Thank you everyone for watching. And I think that that just about does it. So we'll be back next week.
One final thing. Sorry.
Oh.
One final thing before we go.
Yeah, of course.
I want to give a small shout out to the University of Arizona men's basketball team. We beat our in-state rival, Arizona State, twice. First was off a buzzer beater tip in by Azuolas Tubelis, a freshman from, I believe, Lithuania.
Okay.
Second game we dominated. University of Arizona men's basketball, however, is on a postseason ban this year, so it's all for nothing, it feels like.
Yeah.
But always good to beat your rivals. And I want to give actually one more shout out to – who was I going to give the shout out to? I actually forgot. Okay.
Man.
Actually, you know what? I want to shout out Ryan's Cleveland Cavaliers real quick.
Thank you.
I mentioned them at the beginning of the podcast. They beat Brooklyn twice.
I appreciate that.
They started the year 3-0, and I said that I didn't care. I didn't think they were going to win another game after that. I thought 3-79 would be bad. But this team, you have to try against them now. You can't take an off night against the Cleveland Cavaliers anymore. You got to actually try against them, and you got to take them seriously. And I think we'll see what happens when teams start to do that. But I got to give credit when credit is due to the Cleveland Cavaliers. So a couple shout outs there.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, we've definitely played better, stepped it up this year, and I'm hoping we can continue that going into the rest of the season, because I'd love to get back to the playoffs, even if it is just, as a 7 or 8 or 9 seed even. It'd be very fun to watch in a post-LeBron era. So I'm rooting for that. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching, and we'll be back next week with another podcast. So we'll see you then.